Welcome to DNW. My name is Rogier van Bemmel, and today I'm joined by Thomas Moore. Thomas, thank you for being on a podcast again.
It's my pleasure to be here, believe me.
It's been 2 years. I thought it was like a year or half a year, but it's been 2 years.
2 years.
Let me introduce you for people that haven't seen our last talk, which I would cordially invite them to do, because it was a very nice conversation, as I think we both agreed, and a lot of people have watched it. But you've been a monk very early on in life, I think from your 13th, if I remember correctly. Then you went into religion studies as a scholar. You almost got tenure, but then you didn't. And then you were catapulted into a life as a psychotherapist and a writer. And most people know you from your 1992 bestseller, Care of the Soul. And last time we talked about the book you had just published then, that was Soul Therapy, which we had a lovely talk about. I think we've tried to explain your method of thinking about the world in archetypal and metaphoric fashion. And we've explored like the Venusian and the Mercurial archetypes to show how you can speak about things without really mentioning them directly. And we talked for 1.5 hours. We touched on soul and spirit and what how they are different. And we talked about the life of a therapist and your late great friend James Hillman. So a lot to explore there. But right now we thought it would be a nice idea to talk again, because you have another book out. It's been a while actually. Your next book is almost done as well. But we haven't talked about this one, The Eloquence of Silence. It hasn't been published in Dutch for our Dutch viewers, but it has been published in English. Did the book do well for you? Did you have some nice resonation on your?
I did.
writings?
You know what I found. I learned a lot, as I always do after a book comes out. But I learned that that people really can apply this idea of emptiness and silence to their daily lives. It's not something that is off in the philosophical rafters. You know, it's something that people can identify with and get excited about.
Well, I sure did when I read it. It's a collection of very short stories, poems, thoughts, even by Sufi masters, monks, just from literature. I think Samuel Beckett is in there, as he usually is in your books. And then you pick the stories apart a little bit. You take them as to explore certain aspects of silence, which you contrast with vacant. You say emptiness is not vacancy, and I was a bit afraid that it would be a very Zen Buddhistic book, in a very like the Zen people can be so scholarly about like clearing everything out and making everything empty and getting rid of all sorts of desires and will and individuality.
Yeah.
But this book wasn't like that at all.
No.
It's full of love and compassion and the pleasure of life
and humor.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, definitely. So that was probably what you were gunning for here.
Yes, the title is a bit misleading because the book is really about emptiness. Emptiness, I mean, I've been studying emptiness in the context of Eastern thought for years, many, many years. And it has been very important in my own life. Their idea of empty, everything is empty, meaning that you are not attached to what you do. It's very important to me not to be attached. You know, like, I think a Zen master would say that that my detachment from my work, a certain distance from it, is a form of emptiness. And that's what I'm trying to explore in this book, how we can be free, much more free and liberated in an empty sort of way in everything that we do.
Yeah. Yeah. How can we explore this a little bit in a podcast fashion, this emptiness? Because your writing style is so well, like I said, like archetypally, it's very easy to flesh out a theme without really, like, for example, God. You speak about God in this book as well. But you speak of God through Bonhoeffer, the theologian that was killed by the Nazis, who speaks about emptying our world and leaving some space for God in the world, for example. But it's difficult. I was thinking about this. How can we bring across this emptiness you've written about so eloquently? How can we do that in a conversational fashion?
Well, I feel it's a part of my everyday life. So I really try not to be too focused on, for example, on whether my books are successful. That's a big issue. I started out with my books selling in great numbers, like millions, really big. And then as time went on, they got smaller and smaller in terms of, getting out there in the world. And yet my attention to writing and my desire to write got stronger. So I just keep writing, but I don't worry about whether these books are the numbers of people who are reading them. I don't think about that. And that's a kind of emptying in me. It means I have to empty myself of any need to be successful in the usual sense. I hear from people all over the world, all the time. I mean, in all corners of the world. It surprised me. And so that's all I need. I mean, that's all I need for it. But I had to empty myself of the need to be successful.
So you did feel this desire to be successful at some point or at some stage in your life?
Well, I didn't have it at the beginning. I thought nobody would ever read anything I would write. That's what I thought at the beginning. But then I was shocked because, as I said, my early books sold in very large numbers. And I was, whenever I go to speak somewhere, there would be 10 times as many people showing up as we expected. So that was the way it started in the first 5 years, I'd say, of my career, really as a writer. But then it began to diminish. And that was a surprise to me because I didn't know that that's how it might work. And it was fine though, because I'm still a monk at heart, and I have those lessons I learned from a monk of not having great expectations. And so I think that the emptiness that I have, it took me a while to achieve, but I think I'm about probably 85% there, where I don't worry about whether to be successful or not. I haven't completely gone to the end of that, but I feel I've made a lot of progress, and that's an emptying process. And that says something about emptying. There's a little pain to emptiness sometimes. It's not all pleasant. Let's say, for example, if you find that, I think one form of emptiness that a lot of people experience is getting separated or divorced or lose a relationship. That's a terrible emptying, of your life. And that's very difficult to go through, and it can be painful and unsettling. And at the same time, if you can go through it, it can give you more life. Like you can, that's the way life is. Life is not always steady forever. It changes, and you have to learn that, and you have to adjust to it. So there could be a great learning that takes place through a separation or parting with somebody. And that's an emptying process. It's an emptying process that often has good results.
Yeah, so that sounds a bit like this Buddhist idea that there's always a desire or something you need to first be aware of and then let go in a way. So there needs to be something before you can empty something. Is that the way you would think of this?
I'm not sure. I'm trying to think of that. I haven't thought of it in those terms. I think emptying takes place almost every day. Something is taken away.
Mm.
I think that's in the Tao Te Ching, that every day you lose something. And I think that's probably true. At least I feel it. And you have to get used to that life takes things away. It takes away your health. It takes away the health of people close to you. You may lose a job. You may decide to move somewhere and you feel the loss of where you have lived. There's so many things that happen to us that empty us. And that's part of our becoming. I like to use the word becoming, meaning that instead of growing, I prefer to say we're becoming. So as we become more of who we are, I think what we are emptied of plays as much a role as what comes into our lives.
Yeah. That doesn't sound really, like in your book as well, you don't speak of this, you speak of this emptiness as sort of a fullness, and you use words like life or love or trust, or there's a certain it's not a vacant place, this emptiness.
No. It's not literally empty. What helps me to know it is that, of course, I've been studying it for years, but it's an idea from Eastern religion. So I often use the Sanskrit word for it, shunyata.
Mm-hmm.
It's the word they use for this kind of emptiness because it's a special kind. It's not that, why are you saying that emptiness is so good? Because it's very painful. And who wants to have their lives emptied?
Mm.
I understand that, but these Eastern traditions have taught us something important, that there's a kind of emptying that does eventually become a fullness in life. Yes, it actually gives you something. So you're better off for having gone through that empty experience. The one that I often talk about personally is when, I guess you alluded to it, I was teaching at a university. I loved teaching at a university. I loved everything about it. I loved being on campus. I loved the teaching of the classes, everything about it. And one day, the chairman of my department told me that they were going to let me go. They weren't going to give me tenure, which is like saying goodbye. Mm. And I was so shocked because that's all I wanted to do with my life. And so I left the teaching, and I felt it so badly. I really felt such a tremendous loss of my life there, what I always wanted to do. But I remember a woman I knew came up to me, she was a student of mine, came up to me after class one day and she said, would you be open to being my therapist? And I happened to have trained myself in therapy, so I was able to get a license quickly. Mm. And so I said, sure. And what happened then was that I moved from being a college professor, which really wasn't as good as I thought, and I became a therapist, and then I wrote my books based on my therapy. And I've had such a wonderful life as a writer, traveling the world and having so many people read my books, millions of people reading the books, and constantly talking to people around the world about these ideas. My life is so much better, and I made a lot more money. I mean, tons of more money than when I was teaching at a university. I mean, there's that side too. It's nice to make some money at what you do. And so all of it was so much better for having lost that job and feeling so empty. And I lost the teaching job. But my life just really came into its own after that. And if I hadn't had that emptying, I wouldn't have, there's no way I could have had that life.
Isn't this, I'm trying to tease you a little bit. Isn't this also, isn't this cheating a little bit? I mean, if you were still on campus, you still had a job, you just had the prospect of losing it soon, and then the new thing already announces itself. And I've had the same. I left university at some point. I was doing a PhD, and it wasn't really working out. And my relationship ended, and I thought, what am I going to do? And the moment I was full of a new idea of becoming a philosophical counselor, and then so it shifted from letting go of this thing, but actually at the point where I knew what I was going to do, like what you described with therapy. It's funny because it's very
similar.
It's a bit different level, but it's
very similar.
Thematically, it's from university to doing some form of therapy, and then, but actually there was already a fullness in the emptiness. But the painful thing was going through this realization that you had to let this one life you had envisioned for yourselves to let that go. So is the emptiness? Where is the emptiness? Is it in the popping off of a new fullness, or is there really?
Oh no, there was a long period of time when I didn't know. It took me a while. It sounds simple to say, "Oh yes, I became a therapist." Well, it took me a while to set all that up and to do it, and to realize that that's how I could make my living. I didn't know that probably for 2 years or 3, and so I didn't know. I was lost for a while there. I didn't tell that story probably as well as I should, because I had a long period of lostness, of not knowing where I was, who I was, and what I was going to do, and that was very unsettling. But and it was an empty feeling, like okay, I don't belong anywhere, and I haven't. I thought I had a home at the university, and now I don't have a home. And home is such a good necessary feeling to have, even if it's about where you're working, what you're doing for your work. So it was very disorienting. And I was getting sick. I would go to the doctor frequently with these complaints, and he just told me, he said, "This is all psychological, I can't do anything." So I think that the emptying was quite difficult, but and it was very real, but it was part of the whole process. And I think I went through that process of emptying. It was very helpful to me. For one thing, to make a shift from one thing to the next. Some people would call that emptying time a liminal time, meaning it's sort of a threshold time between one thing and the next, and that can be very unsettling. Creative in some ways, but unsettling. So I went through that, and then came to a point where I realized that I could be a therapist, but that didn't last long, because I then became a writer. I mean, I continue doing doing therapy as I do now, but even now I do about 4 hours of therapy at most per week, at most.
I was wondering about that. If you still did it.
It's not much. It's not much, but I love doing it, and I'm working mostly with people I've worked with for many years. So I really love this work, but on the other hand, my real work is to write, and writing has associated work like traveling and giving talks and doing interviews and writing other things. It's a very busy life. The whole thing is very busy, and but I like it.
The emails and other letters alone must be a day job. Yeah.
I can't keep up at all. I look at this list of emails in the thousands. I think this is not right. I have to pay more attention to it, but I can't do it. Especially, I'm getting, really up there in years now. So I don't feel much difference really. I have some aches and pains, but that's fortunately, I'm blessed to feel completely able to do my work. I still do it with the same energy I've had all my life.
That is indeed a blessing.
It is.
Let's get back to this painful side, if you will, for a little while, because actually I feel that your book it says emptiness, and the word emptiness is mentioned a whole lot, but in the end I think it may be more about trust. I have a short passage which I remembered as you were talking. You say being soft is a path towards emptiness. Maybe the most important lesson is not to force your own life. Don't believe that you are more intelligent and more knowing than life itself, the source of your very existence. So this is a very trusting sort of an approach to life. So, okay, I didn't get tenure. They're letting me go. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm lost a little bit, but to still have this trust that life will sort itself out, and that life is wiser than you yourself can be. This is what I get from your books and from you speaking to you very much. But is that something everyone can attain, you think?
Not in the same way, maybe, but I think so in general. I don't know, I can't speak for every single person. There may be some, I think it's basically human, though. I think human beings can arrive at that approach to life if that one would be useful to them. And we all have different philosophies and approaches, so they have to be individual. But I think that generally speaking, for a lot of people, most people, this teaching, I'm only the conduit here. I'm only presenting what I have learned from Zen Buddhism and Taoism and other sources like that in literature. I've been very impressed myself, very, very supported by this idea of emptiness. And I thought maybe other people would be interested too, and maybe get some aid from that to be able to. They probably haven't heard too much about emptiness as a path in life. And I thought maybe I could present it in such a way that it would be digestible. It's a short book, purposely. And the chapters are very short, just the most 5 pages. Are they that? No, they're not even that. No. The current book is 5.
It's like 2 or 3 usually.
Yeah, it's very short. Very short, yeah.
A friend of mine would say it's a perfect bathroom book. Like it's
right.
5 minutes every morning gets you going for the day.
Right, perfect. Yeah, I'll have to remember that.
But you did sell yourself short a little bit there, because it's not just you're not just a conduit of like Zen learnings or Taoist wisdom or Sufi insights. You present a very your tone is very distinct, I feel, and it's exactly this talent you have to speak about loss and pain and about uncertainty in a way where this sort of trusting life still shines through and is presented as a way out of these. So that's why I asked: is this attainable for everyone? Because you're right about it. It's so natural and so. I can imagine. I can imagine that everyone would like to live like this, but it's sometimes maybe it's.
Well, you don't have to live like this all the time. I certainly don't. I have my moments, believe me, when I need to read my own books to get back into it. But I think it's potentially available to anyone. I really do think that anyone could eventually find their way to this teaching. It's true. I want to be clear that I am not I don't write as a scholar. I'm not the scholar of, like, let's say, of Eastern religions or emptiness. I have some books. I have some scholarly books on emptiness. in my library that are quite wonderful. But what I do is something different. I don't teach emptiness or explain it at all. What I do is try to say, well, this is something, it's a very rich idea, and I'm going to present it in such a way that you could live it as I live it. And I want you to be able to hear as I write about this, that it has great meaning for me. And I'm not just writing this in the abstract. I live this, I feel it strongly, and I feel strongly that the reader will benefit from having explored these ideas.
Yeah. Maybe the big antagonist of this emptying, this trusting life, maybe as if I can sneak my own impression of my reading impression into the sentence, but the big antagonist seems to be neurosis in the book. You speak a bit. You have a few of these juxtapositions, like emptying or vacancy, silence and quiet, but also neurosis and emptiness. So I thought maybe analyzing what neurosis is can bring everyone a little bit closer to emptiness.
That's a really good question. I've never heard that one before. And but I would say this, that when I see a person who I feel is really dealing with some neuroses, and by the way, I feel I can give you a long list of my neuroses. I'm not judging people that way. But when I see someone that shows some neurotic behavior, they may, for example, approach me, and I get the sense that they're trying to manipulate me, or they're thinking like at 5 different levels. They're not just really present to me, they're manipulating me in some way out of need. Maybe they feel uncertain. Some people, I think, when they come up to me, they think I've read too much, and so they feel inferior that way, which is probably what we call a projection on my part, because I feel that way with other people, some people that I know. But anyway, that would be neurotic, and I feel I'm neurotic when I feel that inferiority with someone. So the neurosis is a signal that you're not comfortable with life and with yourself in the world that you live in. There's something going on that is interfering with your ease and your comfort. And that could be a long-standing pattern that you picked up in your family. That's a very common thing, or a source of neurosis, or it might be some really difficult, bad experience you had somewhere along the line. I feel, for example, in my life, when I was 4 years old, I was in a boating accident in which my grandfather drowned, saving me. That has had a tremendous impact on me. I have trouble around water. I'm very neurotic around water. I mean, I love to boat. I live on a lake, and I love being in boats. But if I'm in the water and the water is coming over my head, I get panicky. That's neurotic. That's a bit of neurosis from that experience, I think. Because the reason I think it goes back there is that when I'm in the water today, I have flashbacks in the water to those images I had when I was 4 years old. So that's neurosis. They're all different kinds. But the neuroses interfere with our contemporary life, our life now, by making things uneasy and uncomfortable, and our relationships a bit awkward, that kind of thing.
So by the way, for the people that listen to our little conversation here, you write about this experience with your grandfather in the book as well.
Yeah.
Which I wanted to come back to, by the way, later on in our talk. When it's a bit about the autobiographical parts of your book. I was interested in that, but maybe let's stay on this topic for a while. And then,
sure.
I like that you shared that story. It's a very impressive part of the book. So a neurosis is behavior that is unnatural or something that disturbs with just being in a natural flow state of becoming.
Yeah, right. Discomfort and interference. Yeah.
So that's not you don't mean it in a very technical psychoanalytic sense.
No, I'm not talking about it that way with you now. I could, under other circumstances, I might. I do when I teach, I would be very more technical about it, but I don't think it's necessary to do that to understand neurosis. What I'm trying to say is that the neurosis, it could be an emotion, or it could be a memory, or it could be a pattern that you've developed that is largely unconscious to you. You know, you're not aware that you're actually that you have this feeling or this memory. So that makes it strange. So what you might be doing is just acting a certain way, and you don't know why. And usually with neurosis, it's uncomfortable, and you wish you didn't do that. I feel that way at times. Like I said, with some people, I feel a bit inferior because I haven't maybe read enough, or I haven't got enough, I don't know, lacking in some way. And I think it's natural for most people to have some kind of inferior feelings at times. And that would be neurotic, especially if it interferes some way, so that it makes you uncomfortable, or it prevents you from doing what you need to do. Those kinds of things, or it makes you stutter, or it makes you blush, or to, physically maybe get ill, feel sick. People can feel that way, or have tics. There are lots of ways you can express these neuroses. And OCD, being involved in some compulsive behavior. And it's almost very, very difficult in my experience working with people with OCD to help them get through that. I think it's very difficult because it's almost baked right into their bodies, to do these rituals that they feel compelled to do. That's neurotic. It's neurotic.
And to be clear, I asked because you use this rather technical term in this very otherwise very low-key sort of non-technical book, but it's clear what you mean by it. I was just interested in if there's something more technical you wanted to express with it also, but this clears that up completely. In a way, it's funny. It's very neurotic that we're both in front of a bookshelf, by the way, for this talk.
Yes, I know. It's funny, isn't it? Two bookshelves.
This isn't mine, by the way, but it's
oh yeah, well this still, is mine. Yeah. These are real books.
You should. No, they have that in hotels. So, but you should see my bookshelf. It's very big. Okay. How do you feel about therapists having books in there? I was once warned against having books in my consultation room.
Oh, I have no problem with that.
No, I have a very big bookshelf in my consultation because I like being around books. Actually, most people seem to do so.
I never thought of the books as phallic images before, though. But I'm going to have to pursue that.
Well, then we would have to go into if female therapists also do this.
Yes, of course.
Maybe they don't actually. It's not. I don't know. I've had supervision with people that do have female therapists that had books in their.
I like them because I feel like I have this community of people around me, and I like that, and I can. I feel free to grab a book. If I'm working with somebody and an idea comes up, I'll grab a book off my shelf and maybe we'll together read a passage from it, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I do that too sometimes when I think sometimes reading something out loud gets then often clients see that I'm not the one thinking of this, but someone else already thought of it, and we're just thinking about it together. I don't know, it's very Rogerian, yes. I think.
Yes, that's right. I like this, absolutely.
All right, that's the neuroses. That's the neuroses explained, I think. Do you feel we've taken our listeners towards emptiness enough? Because I want to switch it up a little bit.
It's just, yeah, can we take one moment just to mention one of the stories?
Yeah, sure.
A lot of the stories in that book are Sufi stories. That's not certainly not all. They're not all Sufi. Some Zen stories, and some. There's a joke that I heard somewhere. You know, it's just stories, and I made up some of them. You know, they come from different sources. But the one story that I like in particular is a Sufi story where a man is living in a village, and his teacher is Nasruddin, who is a very common figure in Sufi stories. And he's often a spiritual teacher in a village. That's what he is in this story. So this man comes to him and says, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I'm leaving the village soon. I'm moving to another place. And I had this thought that I'm leaving you, and that's going to be very sad for me. And you wear this beautiful ring, and I thought maybe you would give me that ring. And then when I was at my new home, every time I looked at the ring, I would think of you. And if you know any stories of Nasruddin, he doesn't like to give things away to people. He's one of these spiritual teachers who likes to keep his own stuff. And so he says, you know, I have a better idea. Why don't I keep my ring? And then every time you look at your finger and see that it's empty, you think of me. I think that's one of the greatest stories of emptiness. Such a good story because it shows us this person could, you know, it's pretty easy to sense that maybe, yes, if I looked and saw that my finger was empty, I might think of him. That would work. You know, that would be something. And that's where the emptiness is maybe even more powerful than to always add things and always getting new things and filling your life up. New ideas, new books, new objects, new clothes. What would it be like to empty more? Maybe there's something there that would be very effective.
Yeah, I like that. I didn't know that story, but I liked it before I read your book, I mean. But I like it. It also plays very much in this paradox of Nasruddin wanting to keep something as well. So he's also in giving advice to this person or trying to not be conned out of his ring. He's also sort of battling his own demons in a way.
Yes, well, yes. Either that or he's one of these, I see him as one of these teachers who doesn't have to be selfless, you know, who can be, have some desires of his own and be an ordinary human being and not have to be so virtuous. I think that's a very good teacher.
Yeah, that sounds. A lot of gurus and teachers do this in an indirect way, and it seems like a wise observation. Yeah, that's nice. It's nice to have some flesh on the bones, as they say, about the book. But I would. How do you say it in English? I would very much recommend people. It's, as I said, every morning, 5 minutes, or every evening, and try to find some of this natural, trusting, loving emptiness in life. I think a lot of people would do well. I was inspired by reading it to let go of some unnaturalness. So, thank you for that, by the way. I have an observation about the book as well, and I was unsure if it's a good observation, but I thought maybe there's a little bit more autobiographical. For example, the story you just mentioned about your grandfather saving you from a capsizing boat out on the lake. yeah, but I thought in general the book has a few mentions about you. You've always done this in earlier books I've read. You also do this, which is, I mean, it's a nice, it's an enriching way to write. But is it a bit more? Is that right? Is that?
It could be more. I don't know why exactly. One thing is that when I talk to readers, people are reading my books. They often tell me that they love the stories that I tell about my own experience. I'm, you know, I was taught, you know, going through the monk's life, I'm supposed to be humble, you know, I'm not supposed to talk about myself. But I have to get over that. And so I do put, and I think in this particular book, this was a relaxed book. You know, it was something very relaxed to write. It was fun. At times, I think the stories are funny, at least to me they are. And it's a fun book in some ways. It, like one of the people who wrote a blurb on it said he liked it because it was short. And it has that going for it as well. So it was a relaxed book. I think that's why I felt good about telling some stories of my own experience. You know, it starts out with the story of going to a bookstore and nobody showed up.
Yeah. Yeah, which is how do you say that? Reverberates in our story today of you having to empty some of your fame over time.
Yes.
That's an amazing blurb, by the way. To blurb a book on emptiness is saying it. I like it because it's short. It's funny on a lot of different levels. Yeah. So I asked you this before we started recording as well. So as to not be unnatural, but is an autobiography forthcoming?
I don't think so. I've been putting a lot of my autobiography into my books. If I just collected all those stories, it'd probably be almost a book. I thought about doing it. I think my daughter would like me to do it. She's someone who I really trust and follow, both she and my wife. And they would like, I know my daughter would like me to do an autobiography, but it's an odd thing to do. And as I told you, one of my publishers said, why would you write it? Like, who would be interested? And I think that's a very good question. And it helps me with the emptiness in my own life to ask that question. So, and why would I do it? You know, I'm a therapist. I have to ask myself that question. What are the motives? What would I be doing that for? I really don't know. I can't think of a good motive. I can think of about 20 bad ones, but I can't think of a good motive for doing it.
Well, I presume you've had you've had a very interesting life, but I can also imagine you're not doing it because the how do you say, the looking for words again, the harvest of your life. And the life of a therapist maybe doesn't harvest into autobiography, but in books about the soul, in books about therapy. Seems to make sense.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that I've had an interesting life at all. No, not at all. I see nothing of interest there whatsoever. I could write the autobiography in 3 or 4 pages, I think. So I don't really feel myself. I don't think that's false humility or anything like that. I just don't see anything there of much interest. I've had a pretty interior life. You know, I'd have to write quite interior, I think, about. When I do have fantasies about it, I feel like I'd like to write something that would be really very open about my inner experiences over my life, but they're pretty, to me, it's that they're so full of dead ends and mistakes and talking about neurosis, just full of neurosis. So I don't know. I don't think I would enjoy it too much.
Well, Okay, so that's a no on the autobiography, I guess.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah.
But you've met a lot of interesting people as well. That's always a fun part of autobiography.
Yeah, that's true. A few, yeah.
But I looked at your. I know you're as most great psychologists are. You're also an astrologer, and I was looking at your birth chart before I told actually yesterday, and you have a pretty interesting signature in your chart, which is Lilith on the south node and the sun on the north node, which is there's a pretty interesting Dutch astrologer, Bastiaan van Wingerden. He writes about Lilith, and he writes, it's really. I think he translated this book in English. It's appallingly written. It's very badly written. A lot of mistakes, grammar and stuff, but it's a pretty interesting read. So I would recommend everyone to read his books, and especially the one on Lilith. And he says, and I found this to be true with my own patients or clients, that if you have Lilith on the south node, a very interesting dynamic takes place where you normally around the progressed new moon, the first progressed new moon, there is a closure of the north node, which is sort of a, say, something you must develop in this life, sort of the way the angels point towards in your chart. And you go towards the past, towards past life experiences and talents. But if Lilith is there, Lilith in our society closes because it's too, so in your case, it would be like a very natural sort of eros. It would be a very strong-willed, it would be a very strong personal identity. But because Lilith closes, because our society can't deal with kids that are too, I don't know, too natural and too physical. So it closes, so you can't go there, but you can't go towards the future because you're disappointed there too. So you have this phase of like 14 years where you're sort of in limbo. And he says these people can either have a very good integration of the north and south node or get stuck, really get stuck. And I've seen both happen, which the latter one is really quite sad actually, because it's very difficult to get out of. But, and these two, and then I'm done introducing this theme. But the two you would need to integrate according to this reading of your chart would be this willed side and this friendly Venusian harmonic side, which also has to do with society and finding your own group because it's in the 11th house. And I think if you look at your bibliography, you've written a lot of books about desire, about caring for other people as well, about meeting needs of other people, but also about these darker or more sexually oriented themes, which leads me to, I've mostly seen your very Venusian, balanced, friendly side that communicates fantastically. But there must also be this individual, willing, maybe darker edge to your personality as well. So if you would write an autobiography, I would be very interested in where you've wrestled with your sexual desires, with your will, with your ambition, with your all those south node themes. Is this a too convoluted question, or is it? Can you?
No, it's not at all. Not at all. It's very interesting to me. I wanted to ask you: is there some relevance there? I don't know where you're getting the Venusian. Is that just related to the south node itself?
The north node in Libra.
Oh, I see. I get you. Okay, now I know where you are because I couldn't see it in the south, but I do see it in the Libra. Yes, with the sun in Libra and the north node being right there. So,
which is also an interesting signature, by the way, because that is the becoming a person without the father present. You were in a monastery, but yes. It was 11th house of the monastic community. So
yes.
But I interrupted you there. Yeah. So that's the Venus side.
Well, I do feel that. I feel that the Venusian side, the Libra side of me, which I feel very strongly, is And Venus is up there, you know, in the midheaven, pretty much. I feel that very strong in myself, the whole Venusian thing. And but my sense is that is more the person that I show the world, and my inner life is a lot more of the South Node. You know, like I feel that is there very strongly, but it's not very visible out in the world. And I could, you know, go on and on about that, reasons why just growing up in a Catholic household is enough to keep that hidden. I wouldn't say repressed so much as hidden, not visible. And I remember as a child, my mother telling me not to be bold. That's the word she would use. Don't be bold. Don't talk. We'd go somewhere and she'd say, "Now you be quiet. We're going to, the adults will talk, you be quiet." And that kind of, now my mother wasn't so horrible. She was wonderful, very, very kind woman, but she had that side to her that was more the Catholic thing, the nuns speaking, you know, that's nuns who would tell people to be quiet and not to reveal themselves and show themselves. So that has been, that I understand that to be a form of the repression of that what you're talking about, that other node, that kind of opposition there. But it's definitely present. You know, you repress something, and it's sometimes it's more present than if you just let it go. If you just let it be. So that I would say that is fairly strong. But I don't feel great conflict there. You know, I don't feel the conflict because, for one thing, I have found ways to express myself. Writing books to me is a way of being. You know, the pen is mightier than the sword. The pen is a weapon, and I feel that. And if ever I get in trouble in the world, sometimes I use my role as a writer to have some strength and to get things accomplished. I will use that. I will use my power as a writer to get things accomplished. So I could use my power, my experience as a writer to express my Venusian self, certainly. I try to write beautiful books. I do my best on that score. But the other side of it is that, you know, that I do have these other opposite feelings and potential. And I'm able to express those in various ways, like through the writing and through speaking. Sometimes I can do it. But I do try to get that forceful person out there. Yeah.
You write about how do you call it? Like, I think spiritual sexuality which is the ruler of your South Node is also Mars conjunct Neptune.
Yes.
So it's Mars and Neptune, like the spiritual and the sexual merging together in a spiritual eroticism or like a very dark expression can also get, but it's more like Russell Brand sort of. Russell Brand is a very good example of that, by the way. But you write about eroticism and spirituality as well. But in that book, you speak about getting stuck with that as well, because that triggered me actually to ask this question. Hey, that sounds like a little blockage in a way of trying to feel a very strong sexuality, but not knowing how to incorporate this in a forceful or in a natural identity or a natural, willful expression of your personality.
Yes. I don't know if I told you the last time we talked, but my book, Dark Eros, which is a book about sadomasochism in ordinary life.
We haven't spoken about that.
The tendency we have to suffer or to be controlled and the other tendency to dominate and to be very strong with people. So I feel that there's sadomasochism in every interaction between people, and that's what I wanted to write about. And the Marquis de Sade wrote novels where he used very, very strong, almost dreamlike images, not meant to be literal, in my view, at all. But he wrote very strong images of like men torturing women, you know, and that relates certainly to actual torture in life, I know, but I wanted to go deep into it and take it more poetically. And anyway, I wrote this book and called Dark Eros, and it is, people call it my dirty book sometimes, you know, it's like my, but it was reviewed, but it got a very fine review, excellent review. And the review was published in a magazine called Screw magazine. And
okay.
does that come across?
Yeah, it comes across. I don't know the publication myself, but
no.
It's.
But you can imagine what this magazine is like.
Sure.
And and I was so happy with that.
You did some therapy for the readers of Screw.
I did, and I was happy to be associated with that. That's what I'm saying about this question of yours. That was one moment I remember. It may not sound so impressive, I don't know, but to me it was a very big deal to have my work presented in Screw magazine, because I like that, as opposed to being so sweet, you know, care of the soul, you know, it sounds so sweet. And that's not who I am. I know that there's that part of me that I hope I can get out in my work. I don't identify with it so much. I don't want to write lots of books like that. I don't want to be a tough kind of person that way. I'm not. I'm not that kind of a person. It's not my personality. I don't want that even. But I want it somewhere in my life. And so I was very happy to have my book reviewed in Screw.
That's a great image. Well, in a way, it's in the book on emptiness as well, because what remains after the emptiness is trusting the life force itself, which is like Eros is also a very Aries Sun North Node sort of a combination as well. You seem to have a very, very deep connection to Eros, but not on an egotistic sort of. And I think the struggle you might have had in this theme, that would actually make for a fantastic autobiography, because a lot of people wrestle with how can I be someone without being egotistical? How can I express myself? How can I be forceful if needed? How can I? That's a very universal theme in a way, and that's why I wanted to ask you about it.
It certainly is, and my work in Dark Eros expresses my deep concern to how important it is to be forceful. That I don't think you have to be wildly angry, and you don't have to be violent. That's a kind of breakdown of this force. But I think that you do have to find it within yourself to be strong and forceful in everything you do. For yourself, there's no middle place. Either you are a force in what you do, or you are the victim. One or the other. There's no middle place. You really need. You need to be strong. You have to have, what I like about the 15th century view of, in Europe, of Mars, the god Mars, was that spirit was there to give power and strength to whatever you do. It wasn't about being angry or being violent or aggressive. It was about having force, the quality of force and strength in everything you do. Mars should be there always. Mars should always be there. So that was in the astrology of that time. And so I feel that that's the answer to me. It's to, whatever I do, to have some strength in it and not be weak, and not to present it as weak, because that quality has got to be in everything, and then you're okay. But if you take that quality of strength away, you tend to either you get weak yourself and you become dominated, or you feel that the world's against you, or things like that. You lose your own strength, and that creates all kinds of problems.
Yeah, leads to war sooner than misdirected violence even perhaps can stand for ideals or something. Do you mean it like that?
Well, the way I would put it, I thought you were going to say, is that if you don't express this force and strength, it will come out as violence, or aggression that's out of control. Very out of control, or just a little out of control. And violence or aggression that's out of control goes along with being too weak. Then that's a big problem in most people's lives, I would say.
Yeah. Yes, Neptune is now entering Aries. We see it in politics a lot as well.
Yes.
A lot of weak people at the top of the pyramid at the moment, unfortunately.
Yes, weak and not, and they don't need to be tough. They need to be strong, inwardly strong in heart and soul.
I know. Well put. Before let's talk a bit about what you're currently thinking about. But maybe before we do that, I feel we've prepared this. You've allowed me to speak about your chart a little bit. Is there anything to add about this dynamic in your life? I think it's a very beautiful answer, that you must find strength in order to find a balance between being sweet and being Venusian and being very, very strong-willed. I certainly like the answer. But do you want to add anything to that, or shall we go to?
No, I can add one little thing. People often encounter me. They've read my books. They encounter me as a person. And most people they tell me that I walk my talk. They feel that they see who I am in my books. But some people encounter me and they wish I were, they wish I were wilder, more of a wild person, because they sense this idea that they ought to be straight. And they interpret that to mean a kind of personality quality of wildness. Be like, getting into the men's movement and getting stronger and getting in touch with your wild man and your warrior and all that. My warrior is quite deep inside. You don't see that warrior on the outside very much. But when I tell some of these people, I get angry at them sometimes when they tell me that. They tell me that they wish I were stronger in style. And I tell them, look, I'm a pretty mild guy. That's who I am by nature. I didn't manufacture this. It's just who I am. And I don't want to be somebody else. But it's allowed me to be quite effective in my life. I have touched millions of people with my mild work, and I don't need to be a warrior type in order to be a better, more effective person. I think there is strength baked into what I do. I think there's a lot of strength that you don't see. It's there, and I feel it, and I put it in my work. And I do make judgments and criticisms and move in direction. Most of my books suggest things that are very different from the usual, for what people usually believe in. So I feel that there's a core of strength there. It's not obvious. It's not out there and obvious. You don't see it, obviously, but it's there. It's present. And that's how I do it. I can do it, but that's how I live. I can live as being a pretty mild person, but I have some strength. I have some strength in me that allows me to have done, written 30 books, traveled and spoken all over the place. And saying things that are not popular in a lot of places.
Really?
That's, I think that takes some strength. But my strength is particular to me. I don't expect anyone else to do this, but my strength takes the outer form of mildness. And that's an important secret for me.
Yeah, your identity, your sun even, it's a Libra sun, but you can be very much in touch with that sun expression. Yeah, it sounds, it comes across. Yeah, this strength comes across. And indeed, even when you talk about eros in therapy or in therapeutic practice, you don't follow all the moralistic sort of rules. You encourage therapists to be themselves in a way, to connect with their own desires and resolve them into the best desire you can have as a therapist, namely to take care of the soul of your patient, for example.
That's right. That's right.
I'm just quoting you there.
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah.
So
that takes strength. Otherwise, you wouldn't be a good, effective therapist if you couldn't be strong.
No, you need to be strong. You need to be strong all the time. I wanted to ask you about this. Can I ask you a question, an astrological question?
Sure.
So I've wondered about this because now this is the first time today showing me my chart that I've seen anything at all activating in Aries. So I have nothing there, otherwise, as far as I know, I have the South Node, but that's all. Is that right?
Yeah.
Now my friend Hillman had his sun in Aries, and he had a lot of Aries in his chart, if I remember correctly.
All right.
And, he was out there. He was ready for the fight all the time. It's really, that's why it was hard working with him. We were very good friends, but it was hard working with him because he was so forceful and such a leader and so dominating in everything he did. And I'm not that way. Like I said, my Aries is it's like it's hardly there, but I do feel it's there under the surface somehow. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, well, it depends on where but probably one or more of these Aries planets of his touched your, and they touched two things really, your South Node. So some inherent talent you took with you from other lives, but also your Lilith. So your biggest pain or your biggest your crisis in not being able to access this Aries side and having to do that through the Libra North Node, like balanced with the Libra North Node. As soon as you do one, Lilith is there, it also demands the other thing to come at the same time.
Yeah, right.
And he could just access it directly. So probably for him, he triggered a lot of your repressed energy maybe.
Yes, right.
And vice versa, you probably showed him that strength doesn't always need to be so flashy and so wounding. It can also be more integrated with other parts of the personality.
Yes. I just watched him so closely. I spent a lot of time with him, and so I watched him very closely and watched how he handled this power charge in him. And I didn't have it, but I knew I couldn't do it, but I wanted to get some of it somehow.
Well, you certainly have, as we've seen today. One more remark maybe on that. If his sun or other planets were indeed like if his that does point to a more karmic connection between two people.
Does
so
it?
So if he touches your South Node in particular, you've known him before.
I see.
So,
that's very interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting because our bond was tight, but it's not obvious from the outside that we would have that kind of a bond.
Yeah, so maybe, yeah, you were in business together before,
Yeah.
in a way. Yeah, I'm getting a message on our little screen here that we should get to the end of our talk if we can.
Okay.
But can we? So maybe can we touch on your, because we've talked about being a therapist and your last book, Soul Therapy, the book before this one. And you teased me a little bit before our talk that you've come to think of it in new ways, so that it's developed through writing and discussing the book.
Yes, yes.
Can we take maybe 5 minutes to explore this a little bit?
Sure. That's about all I have about it anyway. So,
all right, well, let's have it.
So, so lately, I don't know, this happens to me. A phrase comes into my mind and it just stays with me. And I haven't consciously thought it up, but it stays with me. And the phrase lately has been a therapeutic way of life. So I've decided I have to give a lecture to, I have the opportunity to give a lecture to a group of therapists next month. And I decided to make that my theme, a therapeutic way of life. So I've been thinking about it a lot. It seems so simple and so obvious and something I've been doing all this time, but it feels fresh to me because what I'm interested in is how we therapists especially, first of all, could see that we are therapists, we don't do therapy. We are therapists, we don't do therapy. I'd rather have us talk that way. We are therapists 24/7, always. That's who we are by nature. And we identify with that that's who I am. I'm a therapist. It's not that I do therapy a few hours a week. I am a therapist. So it means that every place I go, every person I encounter, I am a therapist. And I don't mean to, please understand this. It's easy to misunderstand. I don't mean that you practice therapy on everybody you meet, and I don't mean that at all. What I mean is that you have a deep sense of therapy so that you're always thinking maybe therapeutically, but not as a technique or as a theory or as a profession, but a way of being in the world, which is therapy really means to attend, to take care of in some ways, so that you bring a professional, thoughtful, intelligent way of caring to every situation you're in. And that's from the point of view of the therapist, and I think that's a therapeutic way of life. It's not just having a profession. So I think that's a start. The second part would be the ordinary person could also be more therapeutic in their style, not in a professional way, but just in a deeper sense of that word. So that parents, for example, they could learn how to be therapeutic in responding occasionally to their children. I keep saying this because I can be misunderstood. I don't mean playing therapist. What I mean is that you have a deep therapeutic sense, therapeutic in the sense of caring for the soul of the person you meet. Now, another way I do this, when I'm talking fast now to stay at home.
Yeah, don't rush yourself. It's
another way I do it is kind of a fun way, but it's serious at the same time. So I live in the country right now. I look out on the hill, mountain next to us, and lake, and so we have a lot of delivery people come with their trucks. They deliver things, my books, and whatever. Sometimes our food gets delivered here. We have all different delivery people, and I noticed. A couple of years ago, I noticed that a lot of these delivery people are having trouble, emotional trouble. It's in their faces, in their bodies. So what I do, and my family all knows this, I do it all the time. They'll come to the door, and I purposely try to have that 2 minutes that I say them as a little moment of therapy. I don't practice therapy with them. I'm not into that, professional therapy with everybody. It's a therapeutic attitude. It's a deep, abiding therapeutic attitude. And maybe a few skills that I might have, but very simple. So if I see them and I see that they're a bit depressed, I might mention, I'll say to them, oh, have you noticed what the sun is like today? How the sun is shining? I might just say that much. Because I know from my studies in Renaissance philosophy that the sun is a tonic for depression. In their astrology, the sun was. And they told you to look at the sun if you're depressed. So I say to them, I'll just say it, but I'm not preaching, I'm not doing anything heavy. I'm just saying, did you notice that sun in the sky? That's all I'll say. And assume that that little sentence is a therapeutic one. Or if I go into a shop, a store, and the sales clerk is looking a bit neurotic, a bit neurotic, I will try to say something to them that will be in like a micro way therapeutic. This tiny, tiny way to be therapeutic. To say something that is not just meaningless, but to try to say something that not directly, I care, do this, or I think I know what's wrong with you, but, like, it's like I might just say to them, it's really nice having you as a clerk today. Giving them a little support. If I feel that they're lacking support, I might do that much. One sentence. And bring therapy into everyday life that way.
Spreading care.
Yeah. But I mean, very, very consciously as a therapist.
Is that something everyone can do, or is that... Anyone
can do it. I mean, I'd love to be able to teach a class on, being, how do I put that? I can't remember.
You could also write a book. You could write a book about soul therapy.
I could, yeah. I could. That would help. They would get some ideas from that book of how to be more therapeutic, yeah.
And is that, I think we've spoken a little bit about this in our last talk, and then I said something like, the therapist also has to take care of himself and not be dependent on caring all the time for other people.
Yes.
So I have the inclination to respond in the same fashion now that you say, oh, the therapist, I experience being a counselor as a calling. That is something I love to do all the time. I try to live like you've just described, but I also think that sometimes I need to take care of my mental hygiene and, take care of myself a little bit and be not available to friends or other people for a day or two, and then, get myself in that state again. And how would you? Is that something?
Yes. Absolutely, you should be equal. Probably take care of yourself equally as much as you would anyone else. Yeah, you need that so badly. One thing I do, it doesn't seem like much, but I play the piano every day for an hour. Lately, I'm playing it even more because I'm just into it these days, really playing. And I get up from the piano and I'm charged. I'm ready to go.
What do you play?
I'm a classical musician. I studied classical music, and I play every day. I play Bach every day because he is the best of all. He is the absolute best.
Wordt tempereren met een klavier? Or what do you...
I play. You mean do I play the
well-tempered
fugues? I do. I play those. Yeah, I play. Especially these days, I'm playing Volume 2 of that set. Very, very beautiful. Very beautiful. And they're not easy to play, but they're worth working at it. And I play Debussy every day usually. I love to play Debussy, which is so different from Bach. And I play Brahms, and I never used to even listen or have any interest in Brahms. That, to me, he was kind of, I don't know, so uninteresting. But I've been playing him the past 2 or 3 years, and I love it. I really love it. He's so good because he's totally unpredictable, and he's not playing according to the rules. He breaks the rules constantly, and I love that. I love playing that for that reason. And you know, once in a while I improvise, and once in a while I play kind of a jazz. I'm interested in a certain kind of smooth jazz, kind of a easygoing jazz, and I like the kind of a folk style music too that I play the piano. But that all just gives me so much.
Yeah, and it's so an hour every day. That seems like a good.
About an hour a day.
Seems like a good medicine. All right, we have to. My colleague is how do you say? They're eagerly awaiting us finishing this talk.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tom. Oh, I wanted to mention your forthcoming book, because probably if we speak again, which I very much hope we will.
I hope we will.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, then we definitely will. But probably before that time, your new book will come out, and it's on Thoreau, who is not very well known in Europe, but all the more interesting. Maybe it's like Brahms. We've reserved him for a good time.
That could be. Shall I tell you about it, or do we have time for a minute, maybe?
Yeah. Give us a minute. Give us a sneak peek of your forthcoming book.
So Henry David Thoreau lived in the 19th century. He was born in 1817, and he lived to be 44 years old. And he grew up in a family in a small town outside of Boston called Concord. An interesting place, because he always thought about being brought up in a town called peacefulness, Concord. And he, when he was 25, and he left home, and he lived for 2 years in a cabin that he built, a very small cabin on a lake. And we call lakes here ponds. And so it was called Walden Pond. And while he was there, he did the basics of writing a book called Walden, which was his most famous book. And it's based on his life in nature. But he wasn't, my view is that he wasn't exactly a naturalist. He was trying to find who he was and how to live this human life, learn from nature, being in nature, how to do that. So what I've done is I've taken some of the most brilliant and beautiful selections from his writings, from his journals and from his essays and books. And I have collected them in little pieces, almost like Emptiness book, with these little section at the beginning and then my reflection. But my reflections are a little longer in this book. They're 5 pages. And so I try to dialogue with him. And I find him so brilliant and so wonderful, with such a great spirit, and to be able to, I think, do a depth psychology in a way. I think of him as a depth psychologist, discovering how to live from the lessons in nature. So that's this book coming up, and I really like it.
It sounds very interesting. Well, maybe we can, if I've read that one, maybe we can have another conversation about it.
That would be great. I'd love that.
Thank you.
I would love that, and can't wait for it to happen again.
That's very good to hear. Thank you very much for today, for letting me badger you a little bit with my questions, and thank you to all the viewers. I hope the Dutch people stuck around with all the English. Maybe some English native speakers have suffered my Dutch English, just to get to your knowledge and your elaborations. So thank you.
No, your English is beautiful.
It's getting there. It's getting there. Okay. Thank you, Thomas, and thank everyone for listening. And I keep looking to that camera because that's the wrong camera. Thank you very much for listening and watching.
Thank you.
So bye.
Bye.